Okay, everyone. So to wrap up for this week, we're going to just continue looking at our Google visualization and start experimenting with ways that we customize it to make it look the way that we would actually want it to look if we were going to use it in a news story. So just to revisit here, as we discussed at the end of the last video, we need the ingredient that our pie chart function here needs is a div element, right? So, and that div element is actually the place where that chart is going to appear. This document.getElement by ID function is actually something that's available to us in JavaScript to interact with HTML. So it's a built-in JavaScript function that is designed that can actually look at the HTML of your page and pull something and identify something by ID. So document refers to the HTML page. Get element by ID hopefully is fairly straightforward. Remember that we refer to these things as tags or elements. And so it's saying, look for the one called chart div, and indeed here's the one called chart div, and that's why it appears on the page where it does. Finally, again, chart being the label for the box that contains this pie chart, we are now the final thing that we're doing is we're saying tell the chart object to draw itself, right? Using the data object above, right? So remember up here, we created a variable called data. That's why it says data here, okay? So I'm gonna say data object above, and the options object above, which contains customizing features. Okay, so the point here is that what we've been doing in this code is we have been creating two objects, one of which is effectively a table, right? We don't visually see it as a table, but we can see that it has two columns, and then of course we're passing it data, where I have 5 rows, each of which has two columns, the first being a string. Mushrooms is a string, right? So again, we see the quotation marks, we know it's a string, and the second of which is a number. In this case, we're calling it the number of slices. That is how, and then down here we're saying, look, this is the title, this is the width, this is the height. This options object can be much more complex and can provide a lot of detail and customization in the coloration and orientation and size and all of that stuff of our chart. Coming back to what it looks like, one of the things I want to emphasize here, see how that took a second? Let's try that again. See? So what's happening there is that chart div is actually empty when the page loads. So remember, up here we're saying, look, I want you to go load this package, right? Go load this library from Google. Go out to Google and get it. But in the meantime, our page keeps reading, right? And so when it first encounters this chart div, it's empty. There's nothing in it, right? So it says, okay, that's fine. And it's going to go ahead and render directly all of this stuff, all of the other things on the page. Once this comes back, which is what we've said here, is we said, look, when you get this callback, when you get those resources back from Google, I want you to go ahead and execute this function. And notice that this draw chart function encompasses not just creating the data, right? Not just building the options, but actually creating the chart and drawing the chart, right? This end draw chart function is actually where our function ends, okay? So none of that function doesn't happen until all that stuff comes back from Google, right? That's the draw chart we call here, okay? So there can be a delay, and it's something that, of course, we're all familiar with from ads. There's only a certain amount that we can do to it. One thing that we could do, which I would strongly recommend, is if we wanted to, we could actually apply some styles to this div so that instead of getting that really annoying jump effect, which I think is a terrible, terrible thing, we could actually set a size for that chart div in advance so that it doesn't move the user's page around, right? I think that's one of those things that's particularly frustrating on mobile and we kind of want to avoid. So here I'm going to add a class, and I'm going to call this placeholder. Right? Or actually, you know what? I'm not going to do it via a class, right? Because this visualization is unique. So instead, I can actually create styles attached to the ID. So using the pound sign. And so what I can say is I can say, okay, I want the width. It's probably going to need to be a bit bigger than what's in this options element here. So this says width 400, height 300. Maybe that's what's actually showing up on the page. Maybe that's about 400 by 300. It's a little hard to tell, to be honest. So I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to say, look, I'm going to give it a width of 400 pixels. I'm going to give it a height of 300 pixels. And I'm going to give it, let's give it a background color of, I'll go for a light gray. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that 6? Okay, let's see. Let's see what happens there. See, now there's something there, right? So there's an indication that is happening, but look how much, see how much less intrusive that is as a reader, right? There's something there, it hasn't loaded yet, no big deal, but it's so much better, in my opinion, so much better than that jumping effect that we get on pages so often, right? So this is a strategy that I strongly recommend, which is block out the space that you need for a visualization, even if you know it's not going to load immediately. It's a much, much better end user experience. Okay, after that side note, let's start to look at customizing this thing. So I can customize this by playing with a bunch of different things. So here's the title. So this is not pizza, but let's pretend. So now you see one drawback of using the single quotes here, which means that if I have an apostrophe in my title, it's not going to work very well. So I can enclose single quotes and double quotes. So if I have an apostrophe, I can deal with that. And if I flip back to the page, I see here, this is not pizza, but let's pretend. Also notice that I haven't done the calculations for the pie size here. I've provided it with raw numbers, okay, and it has calculated the percentages automatically. Now, obviously, if I passed it percentages, that should work as well, although I would have to pass them as raw numbers, right? So let's say that my data was instead, you know, I have 37, 50, and 13, right? And that's all that I have, right? I believe, there we go, right? Not how I would want to do it. So I would need to make sure, one thing we notice is that it's actually making them appear in the order in which I entered them in that array, in that list, right? So I would need to make sure that I enter them in the order that I want them to appear. Something like that, right? Here we go. So now, sort of the sky's the limit for us. Obviously, you know, we have, we've seen some pie charts, right? Several of you did pie charts for your visualization, but what if we want to do something else, right? Pie charts are obviously a pretty limited thing, if useful. Well, we can actually, the handy thing about this is that we can actually change this to a different kind of chart simply by we can use the same data structure, right? So we still have, you know, we still have 2 columns of data, right? Or we have 3 rows of data, but it's all of the same type, right? It's the topping. And actually, just by coming down here and changing the chart type from pie to bar, all of a sudden I have a bar chart, okay? Note that the terminology that Google uses is they refer to a horizontal bar chart as a bar chart. A vertical bar chart, as we might call it, is actually a column chart. Okay, and if I flip back here, ta-da! Right now we notice here that the key is getting cut off. So we can amend that by changing our chart options. Okay, we're not going to end up changing. We will probably need we will also want to change the size of our div, but I have to explicitly change it in this in the chart parameters as well. Otherwise it won't reflect. So it gets a little bit bigger, a little bit happier there. You can see that this comes with built-in interactivity. I didn't have to add anything to that. Again, these are all things that can be customized. So the place that we can find out how we can customize a given chart is here. So we start to see the list of available options for a particular chart. So if we go back to a pie chart, what we see is in the documentation, it's going to give us all of the things that, all of the configuration options that are available for this chart. So let's just take an example of background color. And again, I'm doing this just for demonstration purposes. I can add something to this. I need to change it back to, I'm going to change it back to a pie chart just to be consistent here. But I could go ahead and say, well, actually, maybe I want to make the background color the same as that box that I had, right? I have that light gray box. Maybe I want to have that background color be consistent. So again, it's even not, it's even less intrusive when it takes a minute for that to load. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to say, okay, I want the background color to be, right? Notice that I don't have a comma after the end of my last element here, right? But again, this is just a JavaScript object, just like all the objects you all have been creating. And I come back here. There we go, right? So again, as I load it, now you see this that's happening here now is because, remember, I widened the chart previously, and I didn't update the corresponding CSS style. So I took it up to 500, and I didn't do that with my styles sheet. So normally you're probably not going to update background color, but see, very, very, very simple, very smooth. Okay, sorry, I keep doing that. All right. So now I just want to move on to make sure, of course, that I am committing everything, right? Of course, I should have been committing this entire time, but I want to go over because I think it's been a bit confusing how I add new files. So again, I'm going to do what I always do here, which is I'm going to come into my repo, and I'm going to run a git status. I always like to start with git status. It lets me know where I stand. So what it's saying is, okay, you've modified newsfeed.html. That was a file that we had before, but there are also these two new files, and it says untracked. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that scripts.js and styles.css are included in my repo now. It won't include them unless I explicitly say to. So I'm going to say, okay, add scripts.js. I'm going to do it again with styles, and I only have to do this once, right? Once they're added, they're added. So now I can run another git status, and it's going to say, okay, you've got a couple new files, that's fine. This stage, right? It's saying these are the changes to be committed, so the next time you run git commit. So in this case, I am going to run git commit first scripts, message, refactored my JavaScript into a new file. Done. I'm going to do the same thing with my styles. Refactored my CSS in separate file. Done. And now, of course, I'm going to commit my newsfeed.html with a message that says, did some refact and am now loading a Google visualization, which is always annoying to spell a lot, right? Okay, now git status. Now it's saying, hey, your branch is ahead of origin master by 3 commits. What that means is you've made changes locally that you haven't yet used git push for. So to fix that, I just say git push origin master, because this is my own machine, I'm already logged in. And of course, if I come to GitHub to my repo and it loads ever, I will see those reflected. Okay, see you all next week.